everybody. This has been 4 or 5 months in the planning, and it finally is going to happen. I know a lot of people have asked me and asked Gil's family, what are we going to do for Gil? Are we going to do anything? And we finally got to this moment where we're having this celebration for Gil. There's probably over 200 people in here, and it only represents a tiny percentage of the people that Gil touched in the 84 years that he lived, which is crazy when you think about it, that you've got 200 and something people in here, and it's a small percentage of the people that he's touched, influenced, coached, mentored, been friends with. You pick the word, I mean, it's endless. And everybody in this room, and then some, I'm sure, has a story or two about how they met Gil, how he influenced their lives, what he did for their kids or their family over time, how involved he was, not only coaching, but outside of coaching. There's a number of stories of Gil getting involved with people in terms of getting into college, writing letters, recommendation, being there in a time of need, helping them out with equipment for whatever sport they were playing because maybe they couldn't afford it. And so those stories are endless. And it's a testament to the type of person that Gil was, because it didn't matter who you were, where you came from, what color you were, what your socioeconomic background was, it didn't matter. Gil was there for everybody. And as we go through this program for the next 45 minutes to an hour, you're going to hear stories. And I'm sure that everybody in this room can relate to the stories you're going to hear. And we don't have enough time to tell all the stories because they're endless, and some of them we can't tell. But that's okay. But you're going to hear it over and over again, and you're going to relate to it because you've been there in some way, shape, or form over the years that you've even known Gil or been around him. My story started when I was 12 years old, and I was at Memorial Field hanging out watching football practice, kids playing around. And I'm guessing they were probably 7th, 8th, 9th grade, I'm not really sure, but I was watching them, and Gil was coaching, and he came up to me, and he asked me my name, and I told him, and he said, do you want to play football? And I said, well, I'd like to, but I don't have a helmet or shoulder pads, or I don't have any equipment. And he said, that's okay. He said, I'll tell you what, show up here next Saturday at 9 o'clock. And I'm like, okay. I went home and told my parents, showed up at the field the next Saturday at 9 o'clock. Gil had a helmet. Where's that helmet that's around here? Similar to that helmet that's floating around in the back room.
The one made out of leather?
Yeah, that's it. Something like that. And shoulder pads that felt like they were made out of cardboard, which they probably were back then. And a jersey, and it was a blue jersey, which I later found out. Actually, I found out last night from Eric that those were jerseys that Gil used when he ran the men's touch league at Summit. And so here I am with a helmet, shoulder pads, jersey, and whoop. Jim, what a way to make a grand entrance. You all right, Jim? I guess Jim didn't want me to finish. Anyway, that began a 56-year relationship with Gil, just by happenstance, right? I mean, I'm just sitting there at the field, and he talks to me, and the next thing you know, I'm playing football, he's coaching me, and from that point on, Gil was a huge influence in my life, not only from playing or being coached by him, but he was a mentor for me, to me. He got me into coaching at the youth level, and then he got me into scouting at the high school level, then he got me into coaching at the high school level, and then he got me involved with the Summer Football Alumni Association. I mean, all through this, we developed a friendship. He took an interest in my kids, my family. Always asked me about my my boy and my daughter. Asked me about my two grandsons all the time. And we talked about a lot of stuff. It wasn't just football. And over 56 years, I have stories. But over 56 years, we developed this friendship that started on me sitting on a bench at Memorial Field. And I tell you that story not because it's unique or special. It's special to me. But that story repeats itself over and over and over and over again with people in the community. And you're going to hear some of it. And like I said, I'm sure you've all heard some of the stories or been part of them. But that's who Gil was. That's the person that he was. And I can't thank him enough for what he's done for me and what influence he's had on me as a man, as a young man, as an old man. Just giving me advice. At one point when I was, I am now, but I was still single, he tried to go from coach to matchmaker. And that's what I did. I told him, I said, Gil, stick to being a lawyer. You're not a very good matchmaker. So he laughed at that. But I'm glad that we finally put this together and we've got this great turnout. And for the next 45 minutes to an hour, you're going to hear people talk about what Gil meant to them and the memories and some of the stories that they'll share with you. Brad Paxton, a member of the Summer Football Alumni Association, put together this little card. And he tried to sum up 84 years in 4 pages. It's hard to do. But this card will tell you, it's a good indication of Gil's life and the kind of person he was. And this to me is a keepsake. And we have plenty around. But this sums up his life, you know, as a person, as a lawyer, as a coach, as a father, as a husband, as a member of the community. And what a great job. Just hats off to Brad for putting this together. Nice job. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention, Gil and I, in the last 5 or 6 years, we used to meet once a week at the Peppercorn. And Gil had his booth. You walk into Peppercorn, you go past the counter seats, first booth to the left, and he'd sit in a seat facing the window. Gil would like to meet at 6:30. I'm still sleeping at 6:30, so we had to make it 7. God forbid if you were late. But Gil always had this folder, which I borrowed from his office, and he always had this yellow pad. If any of you have sat with Gil, right, he's the most detailed person I've ever met. He puts on his pad, the 10 items he wants to talk to you, right? He puts a number 1 through 10, and as he sits there and talks to you, he circles the ones that we've discussed, and he goes down the whole pad, and then he says, okay, let's eat, right? But we always had to do business first. But I've never seen Gil without one of these folders, a yellow pad, a black felt tip pen, and a pencil. That was it. That was his work equipment. And so I try to keep up with Gil. I'll never be Gil, trust me. But I try to emulate him the best I can for this event tonight. So with that, let's get the program started. We've got 5 or 6 speakers, and the first one on the agenda is somebody I've actually gotten to know a lot better over the course of the last 5 or 6 months as we're putting this together, and that's Gil's son, Eric Owren. Eric?
Bear with me, this was not sent through the AI machine, so. And I am not the public speaker that Gil was. This makes sense to anybody? If you know, right? You didn't have to worry if it was a joke back in the day. Now with drones, it's a real thing. When something flew over in 8th grade practice, everybody stopped what they were doing, and you didn't want to give the opposition any tips on what you were planning for. I would like to start by extending my sincere thanks to Rick, Dan, Brad, Matt, Adonis, Jill, Catherine, and everybody else for help arranging this celebration of Gil's life. I appreciate it. I would like to thank all of you for being here today. I know you are all here because Gil meant a lot to you. But I want you to know that if you are here, it's also because you meant a lot to Gil. Gil valued and cherished the relationships in his life, and you were all special to him. I look around this room and can recall a story about almost all of you. I'm glad that I was there for many of them. I can't even begin to count how many pictures, notes, newspaper articles, scorebooks, rosters, and letters I came across going through Pop's stuff. If you didn't know, Gil was quite sentimental. They all represented fond memories Gil had with each of you. As you are walking around tonight, you'll see the framed 8th grade composite pictures around the room. They were prominently displayed in his office for 50 years. Gil was incredibly proud of every one of those teams and players. I'm not going to name names, but I'm trying to figure out why and how some of you were in 8th grade for 3 years.
That's a good one.
I mean, 8th grade was tough, I know. It would warm Gil's heart to know that a scholarship has been formed in his honor. Pop loved everything and anything related to football. Any age, all levels. If you were involved in Summit football, Middlebury football, or touch football with Gil, you were family. Gil was born in Plainfield and spent a few years of his life in East Orange, but was destined to live and die in Summit. In elementary school, Pop moved to Parkview Terrace in Summit, and the rest is history. In his youth, Gil spent most of his time at Memorial Field, the Brayton School playground, and in gyms. One year in elementary school, when the report cards came out, his teacher noted, "Gil excels at recess." Let's just say that didn't go over well with his parents, Annabelle and Milton. That was not a compliment, as far as they were concerned. That was Gil. Sports, and more sports was one of the captions for him in his high school yearbook. In high school, Gil played football, baseball, and basketball, but football was his passion. Not always the biggest or fastest, Gil excelled by outworking the competition on the practice fields and then on game day. Gil continued his education and football career at Middlebury College in Vermont, where he played end. One of the reasons Gil chose Middlebury was that there were other Summit football players there playing at Middlebury. Go figure. He loved his time at Middlebury, but I'm sure he was plotting his return to Summit one day. After college, Gil enrolled at Seton Hall Law School, where he graduated and then passed the bar exam. However, Gil's law career would have to wait. Gil then followed his father's footsteps and enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. Pop had the utmost respect for those who have served this country. For those of you here that have served or have loved ones in the military, thank you. While in boot camp, the drill instructor was reviewing his record in the first lineup and pretended to believe that it took Gil 7 years to get through college, and decided that he must be lazy and unmotivated. This is Gil, right? Off he went to motivational training for the first 2 days of boot camp. Upon returning, he asked Gil, "Are you motivated now?" "Yes, sir!" He knew how to play the game, trust me. That's a true story. Being a Marine was something Gil was always proud of. Throughout my life, he often spoke of great Marines such as Chesty Puller and John Basilone, who was a local boy in World War II. And he would belt into a rendition of the Marines' hymn. "Semper Fi," he would exclaim, "always faithful." After fulfilling his commitment to the United States Marine Corps, Gil returned to Summit. He was home. He practiced at a law firm for a few years before starting his own practice with his partner, Ace Drummond. For 50 plus years, Gil's office was in the middle of town on Beechwood Road. It wasn't enough to have a practice in Summit, it had to be in the middle of Summit. At Owren, at lunch each day, he would walk to the YMCA to play noontime basketball.
Yeah.
I know some of you battled with him over the years.
The commissioner.
Commissioner.
That's his nickname.
The commissioner here, a well-earned nickname, right? Hopefully you gave it back to him as much as he gave it out. Gil could talk a little smack, along the way, especially at the YMCA. Gil's amateur basketball career ended abruptly when he donated an Achilles tendon to the YMCA's hardwood. He always said, leave it all on the court, right? He practiced what he preached. He left me a message on my college answering machine. Remember those? Hey, it's Dad. Your old man really did it this time. He always was making a joke about everything. He could have fun with it all, even at his own expense. Coaching became Gil's passion. I don't think Pop could imagine a life without leading young men, particularly in football. Playing days end, but the impact of a coach can extend for far longer. Gil did not coach out of obligation or because nobody else would do it. He coached because he enjoyed the time he spent with the players, fellow coaches, and those he coached against. I've had opposing 8th grade coaches approach me and say, I coached against your dad in 8th grade football. We had some real battles, but he always seemed to get the best of us. Over decades at Summit, Gil's coaching resume and involvement in youth sports included 20 years of coaching 8th grade football, the Bantams, decades of scouting opposing teams and helping prepare game plans. We had an Apple IIc in our basement, and the dot matrix printer would run from Friday night to Monday morning nonstop. For everybody here that's heard a dot matrix printer, there's some youngsters here. It was like, and it had a form-feed paper that would just go box after box. That was him doing his scouting reports. Helping to create and run the Summit Football Alumni Association. Years of coaching Little League and summer travel baseball teams. Coaching youth travel basketball teams. Hosting a weekly TV show that some of you might have seen years ago on Summit Football. It was on like a public access station, and he loved that TV show, and the people he worked with, they were like family. Years where Gil would fill an immediate need for a coach. I remember one time he called me years after I had graduated, and he told me this is well after he had stopped coaching 8th grade football, and he said, hey, I'm coaching freshman football this year. I said, what are you coaching freshman? What's going on? How'd you get that job? He said, they needed a coach, and I'd love to coach. When a league didn't exist, Gil didn't see a problem, he saw an opportunity. He helped form the Suburban Youth Football League, which saw thousands of 6th, 7th, and 8th graders in Summit and surrounding towns develop into football players. Many of you went through that league and played 6th, 7th, and 8th grade football, and it helped mold you into the football players and then men that you are today. When Summit Junior baseball seasons ended, Gil would help assemble and coach Summit Summer Travel League all-star teams for my friends and me. When I was a freshman basketball player, there were 5 or 6 of us that rode the pine every game. Gil reached out to the schools that we were playing and worked with the other coaches to match their backups with ours and scheduled weekly games with them. For whatever reason, we were referred to as the Pop-Tarts. I have no idea. We were bad. We probably could have got toasted pretty regularly. We would travel to surrounding towns stuffed in a Dodge Caravan. He used to joke that we were 6 tarts and an old fart. He loved that joke. Every game. All right, Dad, all right. Over the years, we ran that caravan into the ground, traveling around the games. It didn't have an ounce of life left at the end. And then we sold it to Dietzer for $500 and drove it 5 more years. Gil used to joke, never even change the oil. Wood paneling was falling off by the end of it. It was gruesome. Over the years, I kind of picked up on Gil's core tenets for coaching, and I'll share them with you, but most of you guys know these. Competition builds and molds us. Sports are a microcosm of life. I look around this room and see highly successful people across all different sectors and occupations. Gil believed that sports and competition prepare us for life. Gil loved competition. Every game was to be approached as the last game of your life. One summer league baseball game, we were getting our butts kicked like 8-0 in the second inning. He was furious. He held us up and gave us a good dressing down and wrapped up with the inspirational words, "Play or die." We were 12 years old. He was dead serious. The baseball season's long. Some days you just go out there and you don't have it, but that he wasn't taking that. It's pretty dramatic. That was popped up. Preparation. As the saying goes, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. Gil spent tens of thousands of hours preparing for games and practices. He always made sure that when the whistle blew, his teams were ready. There may have been teams that were as prepared or better athletically, but we were never out-prepared for a game. Effort. There are many things out of our control when we step onto a field or a court. Effort is not one of them. When cleaning up Dad's office, I saw a roll of helmet stickers that were probably 40 years old that had 101% on them. Gil never wanted any of us to walk off that field wondering, what if I had just given a little bit more? Sportsmanship. Gil constantly used the phrase, act like you've been there before. He demanded that we show respect to our teammates, coaches, opponents, and officials. I'm sure he lost his cool over the years, but if he did, I don't remember it. Pop used to say to me when I was coaching my kids in youth sports, treat every player as if they were your son or daughter. Gil believed in meritocracy. The best players should see the field. I didn't see the field much in 8th grade. Maybe never, I don't know. Gil was a hell of a coach, but like all of us, he was not perfect. A few fun stories about Gil. One winter in 7th or 8th grade, we had a travel team doubleheader on a Saturday, and the games were broken up by a 4-hour break. We lost the first game by about 25 points. That was pretty regular. And Gil, the master motivator that he was, decided to take us to see Hoosiers, which had just come out in theaters. We watched the movie and our blood was pumping coming out of the theater. We were certain that we could have beaten just about anybody coming out of that theater. We lost the second game by 40 points. Might have been 45. Summit's better known for some sports than others. Let's just put it that way. One junior baseball Mets practice after school, we were short a few players, so Gil sent Big Randy Lee out to help shag balls in the outfield. Big Randy was about 6'5", 300 pounds. He played offensive line at UTEP, so not only was he big, but he was an exceptional athlete. His fate would have it, a ball was hitting the gap, and Big Randy Lee got a head of steam from left field, and from center, our lone female teammate, Andrea. Randy ran her over, knocked her glasses off, and then stepped on them. Instant dust. There was nothing left of those glasses. Gil got home and he got an earful from her mom after practice, and to the day he died, he was certain that he was going to get sued. The lawyer in him, sometimes he had his misstep, let's just put it that way. Gil had a few missteps in his youth basketball coaching career. In 6th grade, we spent the first 2 hours of the very first practice, he spent trying to teach us the weave. It was the Keystone Cops. He eventually threw his clipboard down. He didn't lose his cool. Never tried it again. Also used to run a drill called the charge drill. One of us would anchor our feet at mid-court, and the other would start at one of the baselines, dribble up the court full speed, and bowl over the other person trying to teach us how to take a charge. Stu Danforth was out for 3 weeks with the hip pointer. Gil did everything in his power to turn basketball into football. It was fun times. I don't think I need to tell you what kind of friend, coach, mentor, teammate, and attorney Gil was, but I want to speak on behalf of Gil's family and tell you how lucky we were to have such a great father, husband, uncle, brother, cousin, and grandfather. He was always there for us. To me, he was the best dad and friend a guy could ask for. When talking about Dad and his love for this town, I often joke to my mom and sister, the best you could hope for is to be tied with Summit. We are honored and thankful to have shared him with you, with all of you, and with this town. Thank you.
You know, there's a saying that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. That apple's still hanging on the tree. It didn't fall. Nice job. I'll share a quick little story before I bring up the next speaker, but I spent 38 years in the corporate world and then retired in 2019. And I got bored after 6 months of doing nothing, so I started this little handyman business, and my first customer was Fran. And she called me up one day and said, I got some things around the house that need to be done, can you come over and do it? And I said, sure. So I go over there, and she tells me what she wants done, and then she disappears and comes back with a red toolbox, a little metal toolbox about this big with a silver handle. And she says, here, you might want this. I got this for Gil when we first got married. So I said, oh, thank you. I didn't know what was in it. I'm trying to open it up and I can't open it. And she sees that and she goes, don't feel so bad. Gil never opened it either. So, our next speaker is an individual that is near and dear to Gil. Gil coached this individual, mentored this individual. Gil played high school and college football with this individual's father. And I'd like to bring him up now, and he's going to say a few words, and that's Chris Batch. Chris.
Good afternoon, everybody. Eric does a great job. Fantastic. Okay, I'll introduce myself. My name is Chris Badgley. I'm a Hilltopper. Like Gil, lifelong Summit resident. 2 boys are Hilltoppers. My brother, Elton, and I played in the championship game for the Meadowlands. We won. My oldest son, Peter, Meadowlands, he won in 09. And my son, Michael, in 12. Also the Meadowlands they won. So we're undefeated at the Meadowlands. Bill was there for every single one. So he coached us and coached my boys into the 70s, and he was just a big part of our lives. So he was my father's best friend, high school teammates, then they went to Middlebury together, and he was just, he was one of his guys. He was a big part of us. So he wasn't Mr. Owren, he wasn't Coach Owren. He was Uncle Gil, and he's my brother Duff's godfather. So he's like family. And we miss him. Fran and Gil walk. I mean, it was their neighbor. They walk around the block and see him all the time. We miss Gil. It's always nice to see you. But keep walking. But I also want to introduce my beautiful wife, Leanne, is here, and my daughter, Jamie. They're both Hilltoppers. Historically, in perspective, Leanne's grandfather, Alan Schmitz, his name's Fadi. He played for the Hilltoppers in the 30s. So it was Gil that pointed out to us, we are the only fourth generation Hilltopper family. So thanks to Gil, we know that and we're proud, and go Hilltoppers. I'm a proud dad. My boys, my daughter, and Gil's a proud dad. Eric, and he's a girl dad too. You know, I'm a proud girl dad. My daughter Jane, and like Gil, I have a very beautiful wife. Gil, beautiful wife. Nice to see you. And he's such a good friend of my father. So I was like, Duff and I were like 2 or 3 years old when my father passed away. But Gil he was his guy. So he's up in the hospital, he's battling up at Overlook. And Gil arranged to bring Homer Jones into the hospital. We're talking number 45 New York Giants wide receiver, Homer Jones. And apparently my mother said, my father lit up like a 6-year-old and got a brand new bicycle. And tough time, and it just made his day. But Gil arranged the whole thing, but my mother never knew it. It's like years later she found out. So that was just one thing I learned about Gil was, and told this to Jane all the time as a family. Do something for somebody. And they don't necessarily have to know that you did it for them. So it's just paying it forward. It's just a great lesson of the many that I'm sure Gil had taught all of us. But I thought that was special. And the fact that it was New York Giants and Homer Jones and all that is pretty cool. And my father and Gil went to old Yankee Stadium together, Giant fans together, and they had some great times. So luckily, Gil was there for us, all those great championships. We were lucky to have him around. Great guy. He also coached my boys in high school. You know, he's into his 70s, and they're teenagers. So they won championships. We won championships. So he was a winner until the end. He kept fighting. But one quick story I'll leave you with is. So I'm not sure if it was the 09 or 12 championship, but it was right around the same time. He would come running into Tatlock Fieldhouse, and he'd help install, Coach Costco would tell you, the rock and roll offense. So Gil was more Buddy Holly, talking the 50s, but apparently they'd be in the Tatlock Fieldhouse. Gil come running in, just stop dead on the dime, and just yelled out, "Rock and roll! Yeah, baby!" And they just disappeared. But he had that big smile, and the 7-year-old coach would let the teenage guys just enjoy their moment. So, but he was a winner, he was a champion, he was still doing that, into his 70s. He was with my father, he's with Duff and I, and my boys too. So, great guy. I think that's what I got today. I had a speech, but sometimes right in the heart is the way to go, and that's what a lot of great Hilltoppers out there looking out. Thank you all. Thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Chris. I'll tell you one more short story. So Gil was in 7th or 8th grade, hanging out in Memorial Field. He's watching freshman football practice. And Ward Ashman, Coach Ashman was the freshman coach. And he goes up to Gil and he says, "How would you like to be the manager of the freshman football team?" Gil was delighted and says, "Sure." He says, "Great. Tomorrow we'll be here at 3 o'clock. Gil goes home, tells his parents, and his dad, Milt, says, "Well, maybe you should go get your hair cut." Gil says, "Okay." The next day, Gil goes and gets his hair cut and shows up at 3:15.
Yeah.
Mort sees him walking up. He says to him, "Son, you're late." He goes, "Well, I want to get my hair cut." He goes, yeah, but I told you to be here at 3 o'clock. You're fired. Bill Gill goes home with his head between his legs, and he tells his dad that, his dad says to him, I thought you were the manager of the football team. And he says, well, I was, and I showed up 15 minutes later and I got fired. He says, well, son, tomorrow I want you to go back there and tell Coach and apologize to him for being late. And so, next day, Gil goes, walks up to Coach Ashman. Coach Ashman says to him, I'm not giving you your job back. He goes, no, I understand, I made a mistake. I just want to apologize for being late. And Ward accepted his apology, but didn't give him his job back. So Gil goes home and tells his dad that, Dad, I did what you said. And he accepted my apologies, but I don't have my job back. And Milt says, well, that's good. Now you're grounded for 2 weeks. Gil has told that story time and time again. He embellishes every time he got, 2 weeks went to 3 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, but in any event, there's countless stories like that, and actually Gil, when he told the story, he's kind of proud of the fact that, he got fired, but he went back and apologized. He wasn't expecting to get grounded for 2 weeks, but that's just the way it worked back then. So, okay, our next speaker, what we tried to do, the committee that put this together, we tried to get speakers from each decade. And so our next speaker is somebody that worked with Gil in summer youth football, coached with Gil in summer youth football, eventually took over for Gil as the commissioner of summer youth football, and played or graduated in 1962. And I think he was a freshman when Gil was a senior or something like that. But our next speaker got a very different perspective on what football life was like in the late 50s, early 60s, and that's Dan Nelson. Dan?
So I guess I'm the speaker from the 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
I would like to start today just by saying that I feel honored and I am so appreciative of having known Gil Owren for 75 years. In 1951, my family moved from Western Pennsylvania to Summit. And we bought a house, my parents bought a house at 30 Parkview Terrace. Now, living at 34 Parkview Terrace at that time was Gil with his parents, Milt and Annabelle, and his 2 sisters, Linda and Christy. He was 11 at that time, I was 7 when we moved in. So with 4 years difference, and I was 4 years behind him in school, we didn't have the same friends, we didn't hang around with the same people, but we had a number of things that really drew us together during those early years. The biggest one, I think, was sports. We both loved sports. As a corollary to that, we both grew up in the 1950s in Memorial Field. Now, Gil always used to kid me because a couple of years after we moved to Summit, my parents bought a house around the corner on Clearview Drive. And he used to say, man, Dan, what a great move. You got 50 yards closer to the field. And it was true. We used to argue later in life who spent the most time in the field growing up. And Gil tried to figure it out. It was thousands of hours. I would say 10 years ago, I him at Peppercorn, and he said, I spent more time in Memorial Field than you did. I said, how can you possibly know that? But he had a reason. And what he said is, I played 4 years of football at Memorial, and we practiced at Memorial. And when you were there, you played 2 years, and then you moved to Tatlock. Okay. That was Gil. As those early years went by, I became more and more respectful of Gil. I liked him better. Some of it was sports. He was, as we know, a good athlete, had a great three-sport career at Summit High, but it wasn't the real reason. The real reason is because he was a really good guy. He always tried to help people out. He was generous. Two things I remember particularly growing up is I was about 9 years old and I got a new bike. I was riding around the neighborhood, showing off a little. I wanted everybody to see my bike. And I was riding past Gil's on Parkview. It's on a little hill. He lives up on a little hill. And if you turn down to the right, there's a little hill going down. And probably the bike was a little too big for me. Probably I was showing off a little too much.
Yeah.
But when I turned down that hill, I lost it, hit the back of the car. He came down from the house, helped me put the chain back on, turned the handlebars, and said, hey, ride home, but take it easy. At that time, there was one basketball court in Memorial Field. Same place, down by the tennis courts. During the summer, spring, summer, nice evenings, it was impossible to get on that court, especially if you were in junior high. My guys would get together, we'd get the basketball, we'd get down there, sit around, and we'd wait. But every once in a while, when Gil was playing, he would say to his guys, hey, let's take a break for a little while and let these guys use the court. Those are small things, but they're things that I will never forget. I spent about 13 years away from Summit after I graduated from high school. And when my wife Susan and I moved back, we rented for a little while and we started to look for a house in Summit. We bought a house in Summit. We found the house we wanted. It was on Memorial Field, interestingly enough. But our real estate agent said to us, you're going to need a lawyer for the closing. I'll make the introductions. And I thought, I don't need an introduction. I have a lawyer. I took Susan in to meet Gil, and Gil was our family lawyer in Summit, I would say, for the next 50 years. So, Gil did a lot of great things for me and my family over the years. He was a mentor and friend to all three children. I think he was one of the key reasons that one of my sons went to Middlebury and played football. But the nicest thing he ever did for me, I think, is when he thought he was doing me a favor. After the closing on our house, he said to me, Dan, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to come in and coach in the youth football league. That was the best thing that could have happened to me in Summit. I spent 23 years as a coach, and it was great. It gave me so many opportunities. It was a complete opposite from commuting to New York every day. It was a tremendous way to meet a lot of good people through coaching, and it was gave me the opportunity to see kids come in at 6th grade, go through the program, play in high school, win some state championships. Thank you, Jim Benedict. And some go on to play in college. It also gave me the opportunity to spend a lot of time with Gil. With the coaching, working with the Suburban Youth Football League, and it reinforced to me, spending that time with Gil, we became good friends, and it reinforced in me the things that I thought I saw in Gil as a boy growing up. Generosity, a great guy, and always trying to help people. I will give 2 examples, 2 things that have really stuck with me over the years of the type of person Gil was. The first is about Gil's generosity as an attorney. Susan and I had a friend named Eliza. She was a single grandmother. Her daughter had died very young, and she was bringing up 2 guys in Irvington, New Jersey. She was a great lady. She worked hard. She was very bright. She put the boys through Benedict's Prep, St. Benedict's Prep in Newark. But there were always financial problems. She asked me to look at something for her, and I did. And I said to her, Eliza, you've got to see an attorney. And she said, I can't afford an attorney. So I said, well, come and meet a friend of mine. So I took her to Gil, and exactly what I thought was going to happen did. He took care of her problem, no charge. What I didn't expect was that he became Eliza's attorney for the rest of her life. He did everything. Did her will, living will, did some documents for her, one of her boys, all no charge. And I went to him a number of times and said, Gil, let me take care of this. And he said no. And I kept doing it. And he said, Dan, stop. He said, I like Eliza, and this is the way it's going to be. I felt like I was 10 years old, back in the field, with the 16-year-old Gil Owren talking to me. The second thing that has really resonated with me over time was many years ago, 25 years ago, I had an opportunity to be at an event at Fort Benning, Georgia. Now, Fort Benning, I'm sure several of you are familiar with that. It's a big military base, training base. And as you go through the gate, it says home of the infantry. And when I was there, I had the opportunity to talk with a young Army officer, and I saw him coming toward me. I thought I knew him. I was pretty sure I did, and I thought it might have been from Summit Football. But I knew I hadn't coached him, and I knew that I didn't know his name. He came over, he introduced himself to me, and he asked me, "Do you still see Mr. Owren often?" And I said, "Sure, I see him all the time." And he said, "Next time," he said, "please, next time you see Mr. Owren, tell him thanks for me, because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here today." And that has always stuck with me. And as Rick said, he's probably one of hundreds of people that Gil has helped over the years, particularly young people from our town. So I would just like to end where I started and say that I feel very, very fortunate to have had Gil Owren as a friend for 75 years. Thank you.
Was very involved with Gil in coaching summer youth football. I'm not sure how many years they coached together, but when he comes up here, I'm sure they'll tell you that. But one of the things that Gil tried to do with summer youth football, understanding that in Gil's mind, the youth program was the feeder system for the high school program. And that in order for the youth program to be successful, he needed really good coaches and people that understood the game at the youth level so that they were being taught right. And so our next speaker was a Summit High School graduate, played football at Summit High School, and coached youth football for a long time, and a dear friend of Gil's, and that's Steve Schroeder.
Wow, I tell you what, it's a tough act to follow. But it's a testament to the kind of people we have in this town that care so much about everybody. Whether it's a coach, a player, or whatever. I think the previous speakers did a phenomenal job of telling their story about Gil. I have a few things I'd like to share with you all, and I hope you enjoy it. I had a lot of fun putting this together, and I hope you enjoy it as well. I love Gil Owren. I love Gil Owren. And I know deep down that everyone here today carries that same love in their heart. But today, that love comes with a weight, a quiet sadness, because someone who gave so much of himself to all of us is no longer here standing with us today. Thank you all for being here to honor Coach Gil Owren, to remember him, and to hold on to the moments he gave us. To his family, his wife Fran, his son Eric, his daughter Jenny, and his grandchildren. Thank you. Thank you for sharing with him, sharing him with us all those years. We were lucky to have even a piece of the time that truly belonged to you. Gil spent countless hours at Tadlock Field, watching, teaching, guiding, and supporting. He was more than a coach. He was a steady presence, a voice of reason, a second father to so many in the Summit community. But if you knew him well, you knew this of him. No matter how much he gave to the game, no matter how many lives he shaped, his family was always what he loved most. He told me that many times over the years, and he meant it every time he said it. If you met Gil, you left happier than when you arrived. If you spent time with him, you walked away better. And if you were coached by him, you were very fortunate. Gil wasn't just a great coach. He was the kind of man who quietly made you want to be better. A better person, a better father, a better husband, a better friend. He didn't demand it. He inspired it. My name is Steve Schroeder, and I've known Gil for nearly 50 years. 50 years. And somehow, it still doesn't feel like enough. We coached together alongside Don Parcells and Dick Moyer for 10 years in the 8th grade Bantam football team for Summit. Gil was our head coach, although leader feels more like the word. In all that time, well, we only lost 2 games that I can recall in the 10 years we coached together. But the truth is, winning was never what mattered most to Gil. What mattered to him were the boys. Their character, their growth, their future. And I think deep down, Gil knew something that we didn't fully understand at the time. That the lessons they carried off the field would matter far more than anything that happened on it. That's why he trusted us. That's why he stepped back. That's why he led the way he did. I keep thinking about the small moments now, the ones that didn't seem so important back then. Like the day he sent me to the Y with Leroy Horn, and he said, "Coach, take Leroy to the Y and put him in the sauna for 40 minutes. We got to get some weight off of him so Leroy could make weight." I said, "Okay, Coach." Well, 40 minutes turned into 80 minutes. And I can see, oh gosh. And I still see Leroy exhausted, looking at me and with his lip down below his chin, saying, "Coach, are we done?" I said, "I'm sorry, Leroy, the Gil made me do it." And I said, "We're done. But Leroy, you cannot go home and eat anything before the game. Can't do it." At the time, it was just another day, another story. Now it feels like something more. A memory I wish I could step back into just for a moment. And then there was that game at Tatlock Field. A close game against a very, very, very good team. I was arguing with the referee, pointing my pointing at cleat marks in the ground inside our sidelines. I threw my clipboard down, I threw my hat down, and I was pointing my finger at the ref saying, "Ref, you're wrong, you're wrong." I was convinced I was right. And in the middle of all that, I split my pants from my crotch down to my butt, and only Gil would do this. And Gil says, in that perfectly timed way he had, he walked over and said, and I quote, "What are you going to do now? Turn around and moon the ref?" Something else. But it doesn't end there. He laughed about that for years. Told that story over and over and over again. And what I wouldn't give to hear him tell it just one more time. That's the thing about loss. It's not just that someone is gone. It's that the laughter goes quiet. The stories stop being told. And the moments we took for granted suddenly became the ones we missed most. So today, we don't just remember Gil, we feel the space he's left behind. But we also carried him forward in the lessons he taught us, in the lives he shaped, and in the way he made each of us feel seen, valued, and capable of doing more. Gil, thank you for your wisdom, for your patience, for your steady presence in a world that often feels anything but steady. You will be deeply missed in ways that words can't fully capture, but you will never, ever be forgotten. Your memory lives on in all of us. I hope you're somewhere peaceful now on a football field in heaven, watching from the sidelines, exactly where you belong. I leave you with a quote from Eleanor Roosevelt. Many people will walk into and out of your life, but only true friends leave footprints on your heart. Gil Owren left footprints on my heart, and I know he left them on many of yours as well. I love Gil Owren, and I always will. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. That's, that says it all. I do have one question for Steve, though. Did Leroy make weight? Or did you make weight?
I could never have gone back to see Gil if he didn't make weight. And he made weight in every game.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Steve.
I had to go in there with him too.
Well, that's why I asked you, you made it. Okay, our next speaker is somebody that is younger than most of us in this room, I think. And Gil coached him in both football and baseball. He's a friend of the family's, and he asked to speak tonight. And I'd like to bring him up now. It's Ben Huntington. Ben.
The fact that I'm younger than most people in this room says something, I think. Look, I want to start by saying what an honor and privilege it is. And also, it's dangerous to go after Eric. He stole a lot of my material, so you're going to see some recurring themes here in the speech. But I've already heard about 10 stories today that I would love to include in these remarks, but I've only got 5 minutes. So thank you to Mrs. Owren, Eric, and Jenny for including all of us and sharing your father with us for all those years, and giving us all a chance to remember and celebrate the legendary Coach Gil Owren and the role he played in all of our lives. To understand the life of this great man, you really only need to look around the room to see the generations of Summit that were impacted by Coach. I was lucky enough not only to be raised in Summit, to be a Hilltopper, but also to be a friend and classmate of Eric. So I was coached in 3 sports for many, many years by Coach Owren. Growing up when I was young, I didn't really appreciate this extraordinary dedication and commitment. I think we all just assumed that every town had a guy who understood how profoundly sports could impact a young person. Teamwork, leadership, dealing with adversity, winning and losing with grace, and dedicate a significant portion of his adult life to coaching youth sports. We thought everyone got to have the same coach year after year in football, basketball, baseball. We thought it was perfectly normal for that coach to create a schedule and transport an entire second B team for basketball players that weren't playing very much on the A team. I was going to stay away from using a Pop-Tart name. But I do remember by text recently there was a Pop-Tart dot matrix printed stat sheet that was circulating. So he actually was printing out stats for that B team. Just amazing, just amazing. I think we all took for granted piling into that tan woody minivan, balls, bats, helmets, shoulder pads, packed into the back and heading out across North Jersey to gyms and fields in towns that as kids we were only vaguely aware of. I wish that we had a GPS monitor on that minivan from the 80s and 90s to show the thousands of miles logged getting to arcane junior highs and rec centers for games and traveling far and wide to scout potential playoff Hilltopper opponents. It's only as many of us grew up and raised kids of our own that we realized what an incredible gift this man was for all of us. We also learned over time that Coach was a gifted Hilltopper and a collegiate athlete in his own right. One summer when I was at least pretending to work out for football, I got to watch him play hoops most every day in the YMCA. Very short shorts, gray shirt, white low-cut Converse All-Stars always. And he was the only one who could hit this very funny jump shot, which just went right over his competitor's hand and right under the track that used to hang over the corner of that court. He just looked so at home and so happy every time that shot went down. He was so good, having so much fun, and was unstoppable. I also eventually learned he served in the Marines after seeing that great headshot of him in his home in his uniform. And also that he was a lawyer in town, and that explained his name on those panes of glass on Beechwood, Drummond and Owren, who helped families buy homes in Summit, as my mother explained. So it seemed so fitting for someone who made Summit such a great hometown. But to me and to many of us, he was just Coach. To echo Eric's comments, we were really bad at basketball. But Coach persevered, patient, relentless. To teach hustle, another one of his favorite drills was to roll a ball on the floor and have 2 players go out and compete to get the loose ball. Imagine doing that with Mark Sheridan. It was a lot of fun. I definitely ended up with more injuries from basketball than football. I too was going to tell the Hoosier story about us coming flying out of that theater only to get drilled by Elizabeth by 40 points after that game. So I wish we could have pulled off the upset like Hickory. We did not. So Hilltopper football, though, was really where we got to know and became aware of the legend of Coach Owren. He coached the vaunted 8th grade team you saw in those pictures. The first year you actually had painted helmets, so this was really big time. So as young kids, we would see that team practicing down on Tatlock proper while we were relegated to that little side field next to the locker room. But once a year, the big kids would come up and run part of the practice with the little kids. And Coach Owren would stand on that little rise with his crisp brimmed hat. He must have had 1,000 of those hats because they never broke in. Watching as one generation of Hilltoppers would pass into the next. In my generation, it was Paisler, Fioli, Nichols. And then in turn, we moved up. We were passing it on to Allen, Fogg, Schroeder. I did have a sense during that practice that they were going to have some really, really good teams. But you understood that you were part of a tradition that Coach Owren fostered. In our 8th grade year, Coach Owren scheduled a game versus the vaunted Union Farmers out of Lee. It's on that sheet. It still bothers me to this day. Our team had never lost a game. During practice all season, Coach would pause whenever a plane went overhead, and we had to do this to make sure that the Union Farmers weren't stealing any of our plays. We were really focused on that game. In a scoreless tie in the 4th quarter from our own 3-yard line, inexplicably, Coach called a pass play, and I threw a terrible, terrible interception. They scored, and we ended up losing 8-6. You can check it on the scorecard. I didn't have to look. That was the only game that this team lost before joining the varsity team, and I was crushed. After the game, Coach Owren put his arm around me. That was a terrible play call on my part. That was all my fault. For years, every time he'd see me, I can't believe I made that play call. So that was so Coach Owren, once so competitive in remembering this game that we lost, this epic game that we lost, and also so focused on the kid to make sure he didn't blame himself. As a footnote, when we did eventually beat Union our senior year in high school, in a huge upset, running off the field, I could see him saying, "Revenge, revenge." So Coach Owren is a part of what it means to grow up in Summit and to be a Hilltopper, and this town would not be the same place without it. So the next time you sit in the diner and hear that bell ring when the door opens, or go to Magic Fountain, where during baseball we were allowed to get a slushie after every game, but we could add ice cream if we won. Or drive by Edison Rec, or whatever they call it today. Today it will always be Edison Rec to me. Or sit on a cool October Saturday in the bleachers at Tatlock and look up at the top row and expect to see Coach Owren, crisp hat, wide smile, watching the Hilltoppers. Remember how lucky we all are to have had this man in our lives. Our Hilltopper, our coach. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. As many of you know, Gil tried to figure out every angle possible to win a game. And he had some doozies when he was putting a game plan together. But I remember one year he was coaching a freshman, and I was helping him out, and we're playing at Tatlock, and he calls a play. Back then, the plays were pretty simple. He calls belly left, sends a play in, and as the team's getting ready to run a play, Gil yells, "Sweep, sweep, sweep!" And I look at Gil, I'm like, "Gil, you sent in belly." He goes, "Shut up, Owen." He says, "I'm trying to fake the other team out." So, that was Gil. Okay, we're done with the speeches for the most part. We have 2 things left on the program. The committee decided that we needed to do something special to keep Gil's legacy alive. I'd like to bring up Brad Paxson, class of '73, Hilltopper quarterback, state championship team, to talk about the dedication that we have for Gil. Brad?
And I don't know if you all know what that means, but he's here. He's here. He's letting us know. There you go. That's the real deal, man. Fran, Eric, Jenny, family, thank you for today. This is just incredible. And, Gil has brought a lot of love and energy to this place today. And it's something that we're never going to lose. So thank you for this. One little thing I'm known for, and Gil always got a kick out of it, every now and then whenever the team or we were at a game or the Hilltoppers needed it, he'd say, "Pax, Pax, they need it." So I'm going to let you have it one time. How about them Hilltoppers, huh? Look at us all. Look at everybody. I want to say all the names, but there's too many of us. God bless Gil Owren. This truly has been an extraordinary tribute to a man that has meant so much to all of us. Thank you all for your heartfelt memories and shared history with Gil, to all the speakers. Very well done, very heartfelt. On a personal note, I've known Gil since I was a youngster coming up through the Summit Rec Leagues. And as life moved on, Gil was always there. Never to be missed. I never anticipated that we would become best friends and share many coaching years together. The core four, as Gil referred to us, Jim Benedict, Jim Dietz, and Phil Krug, Boston, shared many years and Hilltopper victories that helped continue the Hilltopper tradition. Gil was the glue that helped make it happen. I cherished working with Gil in the SFAA on the 100 and 130 year anniversary reunion and putting together the newsletters and the 130th anniversary celebration brought 7 generations of Hilltoppers together. Only Gil could do that. He enriched my life and our lives, and I miss him dearly. While the Owren family suffered an unimaginable loss on September 24th, the Hilltopper family also suffered a great loss. But today has not been about being sad or mourning. How lucky were we all to have Gil Owren as a friend and part of our lives. We are all better people for having known him. Gil's lifetime passion and commitment to Summit Sports and the Hilltoppers is immeasurable. His memory will live on forever, and to honor him, it is a privilege to dedicate Gil's number 42 football jersey to be displayed at Anderson Fieldhouse and the high school as well. The jersey is a replica or a throwback from the 1957 team. Many thanks to Jill Thompson and Keith for your help and support in providing this. Couldn't have done it without you.
Thank you.
Love you. And as Gil always reminded us, once a Hilltopper, always a Hilltopper. Thank you, and God bless us all.
Thanks, Brad. I think many of you know this, but up until now, there's only 2 other numbers in Summit football history that have been retired. That's number 22, who was Johnny Mallory, and number 21, who was Tommy Odell and Willie Wilson. So now this becomes the 3rd jersey that will be retired. This number, along with the other 2, once the new field house is done, we'll put the circle up there with the number in it, just like the 21 and 22 are. So, great job. Thank you, Brad. Okay. As we wind this down, we wanted to do something that just didn't end here for Gil. And so the committee came up with the idea of developing the Gil Owren Memorial Scholarship. That will be given to a high school senior that's played 3 years of football, is attending either college or trade school. There's some other criteria like grade point average, strong character, integrity, involvement in community service and whatnot. And we're going to hand the first scholarship out this year. We have 9 applicants that applied for it. We're whittled it down to 4. We'll select the winner probably next week sometime, and then they'll be honored with this is the first year, $2,500 scholarship from the Summit Football Alumni Association. for this year. Our hopes is that we can offer more than one as the years go on, that we can offer it not only to somebody who's played Summit High School football, but also to girls flag. Girls flag football has become very big in Summit. Based on our fundraising efforts, if we get to the goal that we've set of $60,000, you can see from that board over there, we're about a third of the way there in the early stages of this effort. But if we can get up to $60,000, we'll never have to ask for another dime again to fund this scholarship. It'll become self-funding, and that's the goal. And so we're honored that we can do this. We've had a handful of donors to date, and hopefully we can get us some more to get us to the $60,000 number that we want to get to. And then as the years go on, we can decide whether we want to offer 1, 2, 3. We may bump the amount up. Who knows? The playing field's wide open as far as that goes. So if you feel compelled to, you can take an envelope. We have some there if you want. And again, we think this is a great way of keeping Gil's legacy alive. The school's very excited about it, as you can imagine. We've met with the staff at the high school. They gave us some criteria and guidelines to follow. And so this is something that that the family and the staff, Summit Football Alumni Association is excited about, and we can't wait to offer the first scholarship sometime in the month of May. So, that concludes the formal portion. Yes, Eric.
Yeah, 2 quick things.
Sure.
Before it gets too chaotic, there's a number of the 8th grade composites that are framed. A few of them are spoken for. A lot of them are not, and we just can't keep all of those. So if you played particularly in the 70s and the early 80s, if you want Gil's copy of the composite that's framed, before you take it, just check with me to see if it's been spoken for. And then there's a number of composites that had not been picked up over the years by players from various teams out of the frames. Those are all available to take for anybody that played on any of those teams. And there's some pictures in the middle table as well. We just ask that you don't take any of the framed pictures from high school and college. I don't think you would, but the framed ones, just check with me on the framed ones and the unframed. You're welcome to grab them. And before I get back to Rick, I just I want to acknowledge my mom. We've gone through a lot, and over the years, they say behind every great man's a great woman. Put the energy and time into a town, and all these young men, there's sacrifices to be made. My mom made a lot of this.
Just in closing, I'd like to thank everybody that's come here. You've come here because Gil touched your heart in some way, shape, or form over the time that you've known him. And I couldn't think of a better way, the staff, the family couldn't think of a better way to honor Gil than to do something like this. And so, very much appreciate taking time out of the busy schedule on a Sunday afternoon to come here for this celebration and dedication to Gil. Thank you.